Hey there guys, it's Jesse, and today we're taking down Cho'gall, the final boss of the non-heroic Bastion of Twilight. Cho'gall, much like Nefarian in Blackwing Descent, is a major lore character, so you can hardly expect Blizzard to let you off without making this an overly complicated fight. I'm gonna try to break it down for you, guide you through the fight, and to a victory over the old gods. Before we talk about abilities and phases though, there's a small matter of the fight's special mechanics. You'll notice when you engage the boss that you receive a special bar at the bottom of the screen. This is your corrupted blood meter. During this fight, the ability the boss and the ads use have the added benefit of corrupting your blood, which, in case you're wondering, is a bad thing. You'll notice there are 4 little circles or bubbles in this bar. Each time you reach one of the circles, you activate another debuff on yourself, which speeds you along further into your corruption. Now, in theory, you have several chances to screw up before you hit 100 and you shouldn't really worry, but in reality, you cannot let yourself get past that first bubble. I'll explain. When you reach phase 2, the more corruption you have, the more damage you take, and in phase 2 the corruption meter ticks up while you fight the boss, so the closer you get to 100, and the faster your quick and horrific death will be. So, your goal is to keep yourself as low as possible, and honestly, anything above 25%, even 25% is too much, anything around there, you're screwing your raid over. So, before we know how to avoid that, let's talk about the results of your failure. At 25%, the corruption enters your heart, and you get corruption accelerated, which causes 2 stacks of corrupted blood per second for 1 minute. It's dispellable, so it's not that bad, but you're getting worse. At 50%, you get corruption sickness, causing you to vomit and inflict 40k shadow damage to anyone in a 5-yard cone in front of you, also corrupting your blood. At 75%, you get corruption malformation, which basically some nasty thing grows on your back that casts shadow bolts at your nearby friends. At 100%, you gain corruption absolute, transforming you into a faceless one. You receive 100% less healing and inflict 100% more damage, and your spells cast instantly and you help wipe your raid. So, now that you know what you're in for the duration of the fight, let's talk phase 1 mechanics. During phase 1, Cho'gall has a ton of abilities. Let's go through them now. The first thing is conversion. Cho'gall is going to mind control someone into worshipping him, and what this does is it causes him to get something called Twisted Devotion. It can be interrupted, you want to do it right away, you want to basically prevent this person from doing that to him, because what it does is it gives him an increased damage buff for 20 seconds, which is not good. The next thing he does is called Flame Orders. He's going to summon a fire elemental, and it's going to add 20,000 fire damage to his melee swings and spawn patches of fire around the room. The next thing is very similar. It's Shadow Orders, and he summons a shadow elemental to come to his aid. He sucks up its life force, and he now has an AoE shadow damage that hits everyone in the room. The next thing he has is Fury of Cho'gall, which blasts the tank, inflicting 30k shadow damage and 30k physical damage, increasing all damage taken by physical and shadow by another 20%. This lasts for 45 seconds, so what this means is you're gonna need 2 tanks for this fight. The last thing Cho'gall does is summon Corrupting Adherents from the nearby portals. These guys have all sorts of nasty abilities that raise your meter, so you'll want to watch out for them. But when you kill them, they leave a black pool on the ground that causes anyone standing in it to gain a ton of corruption. So, these guys need to be moved out of the raid ASAP. Let's get into strategies on them. The first thing you're going to want to watch out for is Depravity, which does about 23k shadow damage to enemies within 50,000 yards, causing corruption. This is bad, but it is interruptible, so that is your job, interrupters. Interrupt. The next ability is Sprayed Corruption, which inflicts about 35k shadow damage and a frontal cone, so what you want to do if you're the tank is face those guys towards a wall. Finally, they have Corrupting Crash, which fires a shadow missile at a target, dealing about 45k shadow damage to anyone near the impact zone. You'll see a little swirl on the ground there. That is basically your get out now symbol. Targets hit by the Corrupting Crash get a ton of corruption applied to them, so you must avoid these. Now, when you kill an adherent, 2 things happen. The first thing they do is they spill their blood on the ground, which does a ton of damage to anyone standing in it. The second thing is Cho'gall will summon 5 congealed blood from their dead bodies. They hit very quickly, they raise your meter every time they do, so standing near them is a no-no. You want to have them crowd controlled, snared, rooted, whatever. Now, if you fail to kill the adherents within 30 seconds, they're going to gain a raid-wiping Festering Blood ability from Cho'gall, which causes them to bleed everywhere and spray corruption all over the place, doing 45k damage every 2 seconds and corrupting your blood. So, you definitely need to kill them very quickly. And by now, you can see this boss does not play around. Let's get into strategy. Now, the way my guild does this is we pull the boss right in front of the steps, as you can see. We begin with the range stacked up between him and the stairs, because when Cho'gall casts Conversion, you need to be able to stun, interrupt, disorient, whatever on the players affected, and it's much easier to do this when you're in a tight group. Meanwhile, the 2 tanks keep Cho'gall faced away from the raid. When the Corrupting Adherent spawns, every DPS in the raid needs to be on them right away, making sure you interrupt the depravity and move out of the way of the Corrupting Crash. The crash is what causes the most increase in your meter. And since when they die they leave a permanent pool of blood that will hurt you, you want to pull the adherent up the stairs towards the door and kill it there, making sure that the tank you sent back there and the melee who joined him run out just as he's about to die so they aren't hit by the spilled blood. The blood adds will then spawn and the ranged AoEers must then snare or whatever and kill them quickly. This is a priority. When the next adherent spawns, pull it roughly back to the same place and kill it right near the first one's death spot so the spilled blood doesn't take up too much room. Now, you want to make sure that you push Cho'gall into phase 2 as quickly as possible because the third adherent will spawn more blood than the first 2, making it much harder to live past this point. And if you're almost at phase 2 while the adherent's up, my advice to you is just push Cho'gall into phase 2 if you can do it within the 30 seconds you need for the adherent without it getting its super buff, right? Once you do enter phase 2, any adherent that's up is going to vanish, so you don't need to worry about it. My advice for you is if you're almost at phase 2, push it. And with that, let's talk about phase 2. Once you reach 25%, this fight essentially becomes a DPS race. Cho'gall's second more crazy head will take control of the body, and he will become completely corrupted by the old gods, which of course grants him the ability to inflict about 5k shadow damage every 2 seconds to everyone in the room. This of course also ticks up your corruption meter. He's also going to summon Darkened Creations, which are basically Cthulhu tentacles that have an I-beam attack that reduce your healing and damage by 75%, and inflicts 5k shadow damage every 1 second, and causes corrupted blood. And of course, this lasts for 10 seconds. It's undispellable, so you need to stun and kill them quickly. After about 3 or so waves of these, you want to push Cho'gall, because living past this point is really unlikely. So in the end, if you managed your meter in phase 1, and you DPS down this phase fast enough, you too can add another one of the major Warcraft lore characters to your list of DOAs. So, like always, here is your boss kill video. And remember, if I can do it, so can you. Anyway, guys, that's it. Thank you for watching. Thumbs up, subscribe, and as always, to be continued.